Oh my god.
No,
Hello.
Romaro does.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Game Haters podcast. That's right. This week we're talking about things we hate. That's right. People, places, things, games, doesn't matter.
Everything.
We're
Everyone.
talking about everything that we hate because we're a bunch of haters this week.
Hate it all.
Hatters gonna hat. And this week we've got the biggest panel of hatters we've ever had in the history of the show. Actually, I don't know if that's true, but it's pretty damn big. It's the biggest we've had in a long time. And speaking of really, really big, I want to introduce our good friend Luke. Luke's here this week.
Hello, the one and only.
The one and only, as well as Dan. Dragon Master
Hello.
Dan's back. We have Twexler himself. Connor, how you doing?
How's it going? Good.
So Sarumaru is here. Welcome back. Taking a
What's up,
break.
everybody?
Taking a break from his every single night doing live streams on Retro
I know.
Japan. Opie,
Life's
Opie,
hard.
Opie, say nope to dope. Ope's back. Hi, Ope.
Yeah, don't do the dope. It's bad.
And for the first time ever in the history of all of gamehuggers since the last 17 years we've been doing this, we have Zelement 5X on the show.
I am so glad to be here. Nothing I love more than hate.
So we're here to talk about things we hate. Anybody pick up anything that they hate this week? In the last?
Oh, I got a game
Crabs.
Well,
Man, that's a minor setback.
so yes, this week we're talking about all things we hate, and this is going to go along the lines of man, this one game was so promising and it wound up being really shitty, or a console that you were really disappointed in. Who knows? It could even be talking about other YouTube personalities and people that are people that use. There's certain terms in gaming that I even want to talk about this week that I absolutely hate. So I'm kind of excited to talk about things that I hate.
Like hidden gem.
Oh,
No,
come
hidden-
on. Yeah, I was just
hidden
saying, rails.
Holy Grail.
Literally
Rares.
Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah, or how about when shooters became first-person shooters?
Out of print.
Oh, God.
Rare. Oh
It's
my
okay.
God,
We have
rare.
shmups now.
No,
No.
shmups is worse. I hate the term shmups.
I know.
STG.
I just call them chuties. Choot, choot, choot.
Choo-choos. Choo-choos.
STG.
Choo-choos.
Yeah.
So does anybody have any pickups or anything you want to talk about before we jump right into all the hate? Because we're going to be doing some hate today.
I've
I
got
got the
lots of things
Darius
I picked up
collection.
this week. Unfortunately, none of it is really that bad. I picked up Astrobot for the PS4, which is a PS4 VR game. I've picked up quite a few Famicom games in the past week or two since we've done the show. I've even picked up some stuff for the Wonder Swan, the wonderful system that is. But nothing really that's bad or that I don't like so far. Except for potentially one thing, but it's not that interesting to all of you gaming folk. What about you, Connor? Pick up anything new?
Come
You know
on.
what? Keeping with the hate, I didn't really care for Sekiro all that much. I played it. I got to the first little mini boss, and I haven't played it since.
Tweak. You
Ninja-
have so
Ninja
much to get
Turtle.
through.
No, I'm not playing that crap anymore.
I mean, it's not the best thing ever. It's not as good as Bloodborne, but
It's
I played
not
through the
even
whole thing.
close to as good as Bloodborne, and I hated Bloodborne too.
Oh.
Trigger warning.
No.
Trigger warning.
All right, things I
No.
hate. Tweak.
Triggered.
Well, that's just a given.
All right.
Yeah, I was like, if I'm not top of your list, dude, I'm doing something wrong.
All right, Starmaro, did you pick up anything you hate this week?
That I hate. No.
Uh-huh.
I usually try to pick up things I like.
Well,
Imagine that.
I got something that I hate,
Here
but I
we
kind
go.
of like it.
Here we go.
So it's more of an ironical hate. It's
You love me. Shut up.
A nose ring?
aw.
Oh,
No, I got myself a Billy Hatcher T-shirt that I'm wearing at MGC, just so I can show King Drool how awful Katamari Damacy is by showing him that I support the game that came. Billy Hatcher came out like 4 months before Katamari, at least in the US. So
I like it. I like Billy Hatcher.
And
I do
Josh,
too.
what
I don't
other
mind
MGC news did you have for us recently?
I don't know, nothing I can think of.
He's
There's
gonna
going to be
there.
Yeah, I saw something. What did
A
you say in the
rumor.
chat? You always leave these ominous messages. You're like, oh, something is afoot. Bye. And you just
and then I don't
disappear.
come back for like 2 weeks.
Yep.
No,
Cold
I
marketing.
had said an infamous Turbo Titan of Legend may in fact be at MGC,
Is
and
the
that's the rumor. That's the rumor. So
Is the is coming?
we'll see.
Turbo
no,
Titan?
A Turbo Titan
come
of
on,
Legend.
man. Don't you know who the true Turbo Titan of Legend is?
That's the rumor.
Winky face.
It's got to be Johnny Turbo, right?
Gotta be. So
Oh.
going back to an interesting topic, and I know Zella's going to be interested in not what I have in my hand, but
Yeah.
he's going to be interested in something he's hoping to have in his hand in the next week or two. And Dan and I were just talking about it.
Penis.
It's this game
that's
that
a good one. That game fucking rules, dude.
I just got this for the Nintendo Switch earlier in the week.
You got it too late. It's a fucking amazing game.
Well, I get to
like 2 years ago.
It's a great game.
I've been thinking about it.
And
you should
It
stop
looks
thinking
awesome,
about
yeah.
it and you should start
Just
buying it.
get it. All right. I'll
Anyway.
get it.
Zealot, Zealot, you said you're going to get it on. You're going to get a physical copy of it on a really weird system. Which one is that?
Yes, I'm going to pick it up for the Wii U. So with a limited run games coming out on Friday, so it'll be interesting. They're doing 6,000 copies of it, I think, which is
weird, right?
normally big for them. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly if it'll be a fast sellout. Dan and I have been doing the limited run games thing for a while, so it'll be really interesting. It's always interesting trying to see the mad rush that happens that day. So speaking of stuff that I hate that I've picked up, though, well, I hate myself at least. GameStop's doing these the 4
LRG
for
is pretty
20.
terrible.
So I've been hitting their Wii U section like crazy, buying all the random crapware, like 30 game party championship and what other weird things. So
I mean, I got a Smash Brothers U with your name on it if you want it.
oh boy.
Ooh,
I don't
yeah.
have a Wii U anymore, so I can't.
I already bought the Bayonetta 2 double pack from you a while ago.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
That's
that was one of the reasons I got a Wii U.
Yeah.
Zoe, make sure you pick up great Wii U exclusives like the Crudes and Funky Barn.
Oh, I have the Funky Barn already. Apparently, it is the meme generator. So
Something that potentially could be a hate is something I grabbed recently for $19.99 at, I think it was a Best Buy down south by Milwaukee, and it was Mutant League Football for the Wii Switch.
That's on the Switch. Wow.
Yeah, it is.
They brought that
and
back?
and a physical copy. Yeah, but it's not them. It's a Digital Dreams. It's not EA, and it's not technically called. It's called Mutant Football League, not Mutant League Football. So
Because it's in the game.
it's like a strategy game, right?
Does it live up to your expectations of revivals based on the quality of Shaq Fu: The Legend Returns?
hey, I haven't actually played that. I've heard it's pretty terrible though.
Dude, all I'm saying is it's got to be close to the quality of the original game because the original game was awful.
But the new one is not a one-on-one fighter. It's actually a beat 'em up. The original was a one-on-one fighter.
Yeah.
It's an excellent thing for a Mutant Football League game to be. But speaking of things we hate in gaming, one of the first things that came to my mind are ungraceful or unworthy sequels. And what comes to my mind here are games like Chrono Cross, Lunar.
Oh no.
Are we talking about Lunar 3 on the
No,
DS?
I'm talking about
Dragon Song?
that's
Dragon
Lunar
Song?
Dragon Song or Lunar
Yeah.
Genesis, depending on what do you want to call it.
Genesis.
There are a whole lot of really
Garbage.
terrible, unworthy sequels that are out there that are simply cheap cash-ins based on the popularity of franchises. And that's one thing right away that I hate in gaming is if you have a great game like a Chrono Trigger, like the Lunar series, the main ones, and then you release some absolute turd on the market, to me that stains the quality and the reputation of the franchise in question. What are some unworthy sequels that you guys can think of?
Anything Sonic after 3D Blast.
Yeah, pretty much.
What about Snake's Revenge?
Adventure wasn't that bad.
Yeah, I would agree. Adventure isn't horrible, but the
Adventure's
controls
not horrible. But Sonic, the later Sonic games came to mind, and then pretty much any Duke Nukem game after 3D.
That's true.
I think Duke Nukem Forever has charm in how it plays like a game from the 90s, despite having been made in like 2010.
Except for it kept the 2-weapon limit, which is the one thing that I was like, okay, cool, we can finally carry like 9 guns around again.
So speaking of Sonic, Knight's Journey into Dreams is another one that came to my mind.
Yes, that's a good bad example.
I didn't play that one.
It's not the worst thing in the world. They just added a whole bunch of really crappy, stupid, like searching around type levels
On
instead
foot.
On foot, yeah. Why would you? The game is about flying around and exploring, and then all of a sudden, okay, let's just walk
It's
around.
like
This
Star
is gonna
Fox
be awesome.
Adventure.
Star Fox Adventure.
Star Fox Assault is not so good.
The new Star Fox on the Wii U is really bad.
Zero was absolutely the worst. Though.
Yeah, you can buy that
Rainbow
new for
Cotton.
like $4.
Yeah.
Damn it,
It's still
Rainbow
priced
Cotton.
at $4.
Rainbow Cotton. That's terrible. So
Hmm.
there's a whole lot of really awful. What are some other ones you guys can think of? Terrible,
wonder-
ungraceful sequels.
I wonder if we'll be talking about the new Streets of Rage on one of these in the future.
Oh,
We
people
might
are
be
split on
about-
that art style.
Oh, I hope
It
not.
looks fucking horrible.
You-
I can tell you that much.
It looks pretty bad. Like
The art style is really janky, honestly.
it is. It's
And the
don't like
perspective
it.
is weird too.
Hey, but
Yeah.
It looks like somebody ported a cheap Flash.
Look
game.
what I got.
Jack
It-
Fu.
Right.
Oh, the legend.
It
Jack
looks
Fu.
like it could play well.
Looks
though,
like
but-
somebody ported a cheap Flash game.
Yeah.
Looks like.
Hey, I'm trying to give him a little bit of credit here.
Yeah.
Like you went out,
So-
you put some actual Streets of Rage characters in it. You did some work.
I don't know how much Shaq Fu is worth, but this is complete with instructions and
It's worth too
cartridge.
much. It's
Never-
an EA
CIB.
cartridge.
It's a
Kibler,
hidden
man.
gem.
Never
Holy
been
Grail.
played. This is a true holy grail.
Out of
Never
print.
been played.
Hidden Holy Grail.
Shaq Fu for the Sega Genesis.
Well, Dan, what about your favorite furry feline Bubsy? Bubsy 3D.
But Bubsy was never good in the first place.
And the paws of Peter.
It did get
Not
worse.
terrible.
Bubsy was lousy. I mean, the first game was bad. It had falling damage.
But
The
2D,
level design
but the
was
3D was
floppy.
worse.
Did the
Yeah,
reboot
it's
come
pretty
out yet?
Yeah,
Oh my god, it was so
Is it
bad.
not-
Bubsy reboot they're making.
Yeah, I don't
I think
think
that's
how
already
that-
happened.
Because it's
Yeah, that,
retro.
Did it?
that already happened.
No.
Yeah, you-
It's a Bubsy 4 that came out. There was one on the PlayStation 4, and it's actually better than the other Bubsy games, but it does still suck.
What the fuck does that
Bubsy
mean?
wasn't good in the first place. Well, it can't be worse. I mean, it's not like you can make a worse game than Bubsy 3D.
Yes,
I
they
challenge you
can't do
to sit through Trevor McFur.
I played through Trevor McFur. It's
Ooh.
bad.
And yeah,
But it's
Bubsy is
not-
on the Jaguar too.
Yeah, the Bubsy Jaguar game is also terrible.
That's a
It's-
bad one.
Kid Panda says Bubsy 3D is the best.
What? I mean, is it better than Superman 64? No. It's terrible. It's
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I didn't even know the new one had dropped already. I didn't know it was out.
oh,
yet.
drop
Nobody
is
knew.
the right word.
Yeah,
drop
drop
it right in the
drop is a
trash.
Dropped on their head.
Oh my god,
But-
dude! It's
But let's think of a few other. What are some games that had really terrible games in the franchise that disappointed you, or outright numbered sequels that were just awful?
you know what?
That's like
remember-
hold
I remember
on, hold on.
buying- I remember buying this game for $15 because I was like, "Oh, okay, the characters in it are good." But fuck Mario's Time Machine.
Yeah.
That's not a
like,
real.
I-
That's not a real
I was
What
sequel.
about Mario is
Yeah.
missing?
I had Mario is missing
up there,
too.
Mario's missing. Mario's Time Machine. Mario
Mario's-
Hotel.
Yo, Mario's Time Machine is
Creepy.
actually better on the NES than the SNES.
Mario's Time Machine is horrific on any platform. It's like Quest 64. It's not good.
Quest 64 is also
It's
not good.
garbage.
I
It's
played through
garbage.
all of Mario is missing just because somebody gave it to me and they're like, look, it's a Mario game. I was like, oh, great.
Before we move on to the next,
Luigi.
Sorry, if it makes
Same
you
as-
feel any better. I brute forced my way through Mario's Time Machine, not actually learning anything from it, just because I wanted to. I wanted to get
what happened.
something out of it. Like, I will finish this game. I paid money for this.
but before we move on to another thing that we hate in gaming, does anybody have any final suggestions for terrible sequels in franchises?
I'd say Dark Souls 2 is pretty disappointing. I don't
but
know
it's
how
not-
many
it's not-
Souls fans are
It's
here.
not a total. It's not a total bastardization. It's not Diablo Mobile Adventure or whatever. It's still a game that plays reasonably well like Dark Souls, though it might be a disappointment. Like I say, a Metal Gear Solid 2 was at the time. It's not a complete bastardization of the franchise. I don't know if there's quite a level of hate there. But let's move on to another topic and another thing that
Spriggan
I
2.
absolutely hate in gaming. Which game?
Spriggan too?
Spriggan?
Spriggan?
It's
Spriggan's
disappointing.
side-
Super
side
Air
scroller
Zonk is
too.
disappointing, but I don't hate those.
Super Air Zonk is very disappointing.
Yeah.
Oh, big
It has the
blow.
best ending music ever.
It does. That song is epic. But
That
that's
game
like the
over
best
music.
thing
But
about
Star
here's-
News.
But here's the thing: Super Air Zonk didn't go from a great game to a bad game. It went from a great game to an average game. Lunar and
That's true.
Chrono
It's
Cross
not terrible.
are
It's
turds.
pretty terrible.
I would
So-
argue that Chrono Cross actually has the benefit of an amazing soundtrack.
I
Like,
like
Chrono Cross
actually.
soundtrack is phenomenal when you
So-
consider what it is. Now, I agree that there's plenty of parts of Chrono Cross, the game, that are very, very weak. You do not need that many characters. But I feel like it is an average game, not a stinker, like you were saying, to make the
But it's
same
not
point.
Chrono Trigger. I think that's what he hates
Chrono,
about it.
Chrono
Yeah,
Cross,
but what-
Chrono
what
Cross
could be
offended
Chrono
every sense
Trigger?
of mine except for the Masuda music soundtrack. I mean, the game was ugly. It wasn't fun. The characters were boring. The actual battle system was garbage.
Well, you
This is
obviously
what the-
weren't a furry if you didn't like the characters.
Ooh. You know,
The
KP
random accent
said,
generator as well. So
KP said Blaster Master 2.
Dude, you're gonna.
Oh,
Here's
you're
another
you're gonna
shitter.
upset
How about
XL
Strider
Uh,
Returns?
Strider
Yeah,
Returns.
Strider
That's
Returns.
exactly
Oh,
where
yeah.
I was going with after that. Was
I
like,
didn't-
This is like,
US
let's think
gonna
of
say
Euro
that.
trash games, Euro trash sequels on Genesis. We do that. We have a whole library of options.
That's
Oh my
true.
God.
We'll be here forever.
Yeah, I didn't actually hate. I didn't really hate Blaster Master 2. I thought it was kind of fun.
I thought it was kind of shit.
You're talking about on the Sega Genesis?
Dude,
Yeah.
the one on the Switch is dope. And I
Dude,
haven't
and the
downloaded
Switch-
talking about
sequel.
There's a
Blaster
sequel
Master
now too, I
Returns?
think.
Yeah,
I know,
Blaster
and I
Master
haven't
Zero
gotten
2
it
is
yet.
out, yeah.
I need to download that. I keep forgetting.
Yeah, that is great. That is much better. It's obviously 2 is the black sheep of the series, but it's actually not a terrible game. I didn't mind it. It doesn't have any top view levels. The challenge is way unbalanced because it's very difficult right from the beginning. The more you get into it, and the more you're able to level up and get your health bar extended, it's not horrible. Okay, yeah, it's a disappointment, but it's not horrible.
But you don't even get the good story of the kid who randomly jumps into a bottomless looking pit after his pet
Yep.
frog. Like that was like who wouldn't
Chase
do that?
after you, right? Yeah.
Well, that
That's
frog
very
died
good.
for his sins. But nonetheless, the next
Oh,
thing
turning
that I
the
have on my
frogs
list
gay.
of things that hate, I hate.
the water.
Hey, can somebody else pick something they hate? Because we're already 20 minutes in, Dan. You're not going to just make the whole
Thanks,
list.
Dan.
Dan.
Dan. Hey, Dan. You know you can start your own channel. You know that, right? I'll be on it if you start one.
I'm down.
Wednesday nights at 9. Perfect.
Yeah.
You know
Right
what?
after this.
I'm gonna jump in here though because I got one that I was thinking of, and it's the rise of like the YouTube gaming channels.
Oh, agreed.
That
Well, here's-
shit
Yeah.
irritates me.
You mean how I learn about new games?
Let me be very clear about YouTube gaming channels. There are people who are very talented and make great content.
Oh yeah,
I'm talking about the Angry
Oh, I
Video
agree.
Game Nerd. I'm talking about GameSack. I'm talking
Talking
about
about Metal Jesus Rocks.
no.
dude, that's
What?
the thing though. It's like
Nobody's
for
with me
every,
on this.
for every person that you've got that makes like good content, or it looks like they actually put effort into it. You've got the e-bagging crew like Metal Jesus Rocks, or oh no, Radical Reggie needs gas money to go to the post office.
Radical Reggie sounds like the name of a platform game about an anthropomorphic animal with sunglasses from the Genesis era. Hello, I'm Radical Reggie. I'm a skunk. I've got two.
You sound like Buzz Killington.
Hey, in all
Nah, dude,
seriousness,
screw
guys,
Joe.
I have some mold in my dorm room. If you could donate to my Patreon to fund some replacements,
Yeah,
that'd be great.
How
I'll
about if I
send
ship
you a
you some
Kofi
bleach?
instead.
What
Yeah.
you got to do is you got to be sitting in front of a wall of games that's worth a ton of money to do that.
Yeah,
Well,
more than what
or-
you're begging for.
Or,
Like-
or you just had to get in
Yeah.
early. This is the most important thing about those big YouTube gaming channels. It's people who got in reasonably early and developed a fan base and a list of content around that. There's a lot of people
It's
who
called
have
brainwashing
absolutely-
a generation.
Well, no, there's people who have absolutely no talent and no reason to be doing YouTube shows,
Sure.
except for the fact that they got in early and they built up a following, and that's what's kept them going for a long amount of time.
Hey man,
And
I know
the
you were not
problem-
talking about John the Shill Hancock and his "I will review any trash clone console you send me for
is
free."
he the guy with the really thick Northwestern
donation.
accent where he's like,
Yeah, he's the
"This
guy who
is
lost
the
his foot to
immortal
diabetes.
John Hancock here, and today
He's always got the altered beast hat or some kind of Sega hat.
He's got like a
thing
silly
going on.
grin on his face the whole time.
That's
Yes.
that's the one.
Who is that? Bithead? Bithead's pretty
He's
awesome.
a legend.
No,
like that.
that's
Yeah.
cool, but I'm
Yeah, he's got awesome delivery.
But I think the problem that we run into there's I can't even think of what this guy's name is, but he's like Dark Kobold's arch nemesis. But there's some guy.
Oh,
on
you mean
YouTube-
a blackened falcon, whatever?
oh,
I
you
know,
go
Parallax.
No, that's all
parallax
text.
scrolling.
No, it's a guy. Like anytime any news information, like any bit of
Oh,
gaming news
It's
comes up,
RGT. It's
Yeah.
RGT.
Oh,
that
that
guy.
He's the homeless Billy Joel guy.
Oh my god, dude! Like that guy irritates the shit, and he's constantly putting up a video. Like the fucking analog SG comes out, he's gonna have a fucking video all about it.
Dude,
And he's gonna be
everybody
spam-
makes it's like the whole YouTube echo chamber. If somebody makes a video about some news, everybody repeats it, and that's kind
Yeah,
of
well,
like,
Social jerk.
Or
Here's-
social
here's
justice
another-
warriors ruining
I have
my game.
a most hated
Jesus.
YouTuber. There's this guy in England, and I'll call him Asshat Gaming Man. And
Oh,
what he
you talk-
does is
I love Ashton.
he repeats
Oh,
stuff.
the top hat guy.
He repeats stuff out of like Wikipedia.
He's not
can't
even British.
pronounce shit correctly. So he's like, "Hello there, we're doing a video about the PC engine. Now, what happens is she's all over the floor, and we've got ourselves a system." And it absolutely drives me nuts. And then he constantly complains about and the internet echo chamber filled with people who are from America who like the NES. You can't even fucking pronounce PC, you asshole. Why the fuck are you
Nobody
doing
says
YouTube?
NES.
He's got those clickbait titles too, where it's like, "Is it still worth it in this year?" It's like,
can I resell this for a lot of money?
Not only that, it'll be like the secret gaming system you absolutely never heard of until now, until you've clicked this video and watched it for 20 minutes and also not used an ad blocker. And oh my god, I hate those people. But yeah, there's a lot of absolutely terrible YouTube channels, and that's the whole thing. Is there's also people who, instead of doing, say, funny or entertaining content, will do educational content. So there's one channel I watch. It's called, I think, Spawn Wave, and it's a guy who takes apart
Splash Wave.
He buys things from like
GameStop.
Oh, different.
Yeah.
Spawn Wave, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and he buys things and takes them apart and grades condition of things he gets inexpensively from GameStop and a number of other things. Great channel. It's not trying to be funny. He's not trying to do things he's not capable of. Perfectly great content. And then there's channels that seem to rely entirely on production value. But there's channels that rely almost entirely on having really high production values, but have garbage.
You mean like
content.
Game Snack?
No, I mean
I think he likes the
game
channel. I guess.
A game stack's all right. Joe and Dave are fine.
I
Joe
mean, they have
does.
high
Joe
production
does.
values.
Yeah, Joe does an awesome job with the editing for sure. One that I was thinking about, really kind of a different type of aspect of the gaming world, but like Game Chasers or like Retro Liberties or Pixel, or what do they call them? Pixel something.
Junkies, I think, or something.
Yeah. The
Pixel Hero Game Squad.
NES Pursuit, I think, is actually an awesome channel. It's funny because I loved NES Pursuit, and I realized that it is very much similar to what Game Chasers was, but the personalities of like Aaron and Ricky are so funny compared to the Game Chasers. I think the Game Chasers, the Game Chasers guys are kind of dicks. Like, they're just fucking elitists, like dicks, and they act like, oh, I'm gonna get a good deal because we got a YouTube channel. And it's just like every time I watch them, I'm like, you know what, these guys aren't funny. They're just dicks.
There's
Whereas
another
like,
one, they're called Bad Graphics Gamers. Some of their videos can be pretty funny too.
They've shown up at a couple of the conventions we've done.
Yeah,
I've watched their channel outside of like
MGC a couple times.
Really?
Yeah, Desh did a
they've
challenge.
Been in VGS actually.
Do you guys remember Desh?
Yeah.
Was he working on the Polymega?
No.
You're thinking
no one was working on the Polymega.
No one was working on that.
Brian, you're thinking of Dang Dang. That's Dang Dang.
Oh,
he's the person who's working on the Polymega. Desh is one of the members also on the PC Engine forums.
I remember Desh.
Yeah, he did.
I remember him from the from MGC too. He was a pretty cool guy.
Yeah,
he did that awesome custom NES with a FAMI on top, where you could actually load it in either way. Do you guys remember that? Where it was like an NES, where he actually took the top of the NES off and put the top of a Famicom on top, color painted it, and you could put an NES cartridge in or a Famicom cartridge in, and either one played. It looked amazing.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah, it was really neat.
There have been a couple of things like the original analog NT that were not FPGA based, that would have like both cartridge slots and things. There were also cheap pieces of garbage that were NES on a clone chips, or NES on a chip clones, like the Messiah generation.
Off the dick though, so don't get an analog NT.
Yeah. But let's move on to other things we hate in gaming, since we're already 30 minutes into the show. Who's next?
You are.
Oh, I got to
talk about.
I know what I really hate is
it's
Kickstarters that promise things and then they don't deliver them. Like,
hey guys, I gotta go. Bye.
Could this possibly be art book related in some way?
Oh my god!
You know what I really?
I know it's coming. I have the faith. I believe that there is an art book coming.
It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. I'm sorry.
I believe it. We saw the whole thing with the CD printing and whatnot, but I have faith. Sorry, it's coming. I know it's coming.
It's coming.
That is the look of a man who is about to leave town for Mexico with your money.
Well, it's too late for a chargeback, so all I've got left is faith.
We love you, Saru. What I was going to say is phrases in video games, and two that I absolutely fucking hate. One is AAA title. I just hate that more than anything. And then second, I've said it many times on this podcast, the term Metroidvania.
So let's start with AAA title. What's a better way to refer to a full-blown, high-budget game that you would find to be more acceptable than AAA title?
Full-blown, high-budget game.
Shield product.
EA Sports. It's in the game.
I don't know. I mean, what do we call shit like? I mean, God, I'm just looking at.
Do we call it a big-budget blockbuster?
Castlevania 3 came out versus like when. God, I don't know. Like when
Bloodstained, Curse of the Moon came out?
Tag Team Wrestling on the NES versus Castlevania 3. Like, one game obviously took a lot of time to make, and one game was just slapped together. I mean, it's just a good game and a bad game. I mean, does it really have to have this, like,
I do think this. I think that as the budgets of games have expanded over the years, and if we go back, say, 20 years ago, I remember an interesting interview with the people behind gameHATERS, and they were talking about how Grandia had cost more than $10 million to make, and that small budget games were going to come back into favor at the time, because eventually it would be too expensive to keep producing what at that time were AAA level titles for most publishers. If that game failed, they'd be out of business or severely limited. So when you look at a game that, say, for example, we'll take, since you brought up Castlevania 3, we'll take a similar game, the 8-bit style Bloodstained, right? That is a good game. It's a well-made game. There's no problem with the game itself, but I wouldn't compare Bloodstained to, say, let's think of something that's a super high-budget game, Sekiro, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which I'm probably not. And I know Luke thinks it's Suckyros. But you're talking about a game that was made on a probably $20 to $30 million or more budget. That's what we would traditionally call a AAA game, even though I know that you're not talking about the same thing. They both might be good games, but whether or not they're good games is irrelevant to, is this a game that's going to be a big budget, high production value, full-fledged experience, or is this going to be a game that tries to remake the experience of something from 30 years ago? And that doesn't mean that one is a better or worse game than the other, but what it does do is it does differentiate. This is something where if you're paying $60 for it, you know where the money went.
Paid $60 for that.
Sure. I mean, I guess what a video game console can do now has a wide spectrum of different types of consoles. Like back in the day, you'd have a Super Nintendo or a Sega CD game come out the same month as a Game Boy game. So now some Game Boy games would be, made by smaller companies with much lower budget. You wouldn't compare them by any means because of the different hardware they're on. But now you have one single console that can do hardware ranges in that same span. So yeah, you'd have smaller budget games like indie games or whatever you want to call them, and you'd have the more larger scale games. I mean, you compare Sekiro to whatever else is coming out around this time. I mean, you would compare it to like Uncharted or whatever you want to, whatever you would consider it.
That was like a big budget game. Uncharted was not a cheap game.
Yeah, Uncharted they dumped a ton of money into. But it was like back in the day, it was possible for one of those smaller companies to make one of those games that was like on the same level as, something that they dumped a ton of money into. And now it's like completely unfeasible.
Right. And
well,
budgets have gone up.
Well,
I mean, it is to a certain degree because you can't make a game that has that much animation, that much assets, that much. You need a huge team.
So it's all about graphics. It's about how a game.
It's all about ass.
So wasn't Minecraft made by like 2 people?
It was, but I would
Moji?
consider that to be a AAA game in the sense that we're talking about. When I hear AAA game, I think of that as comparing, for example, an art film that comes out in a limited number of theaters and a Marvel movie, right?
What if all 3 of those A's means autism? Then you're talking about Minecraft.
So then if that's the way you look at it, then like there really is only one. There is really only one AAA title that came out on the Nintendo Switch then.
I think Breath of the Wild. I think Super Mario Odyssey. I think there's quite a few AAA titles, and there's ports of things as well.
I'd got Splatoon 2 in there. I mean, I think it's I usually think of first-party titles when it comes to
Smash Brothers.
Yeah,
Smash Brothers is absolutely one thing. Of third-party stuff, we have Dragon Quest XI coming to Switch, which is definitely a AAA title.
Definitely.
I think we're talking about games that are very, very big budget. And when I hear the term AAA, I'm thinking of something that is a full boat experience, at least in terms of intent and in terms of budget for it. and I don't know that there's an acceptable substitute word for that beyond like beyond big budget or outright saying that. Besides AAA, I don't think of AAA as being something that dictates the quality of the game, but rather the production value.
Yeah, but if it's strictly talking about value, though, I mean, what's wrong with saying big
budget?
AAA.
Yeah.
Tow my car, bitches.
I mean, it is a big budget game.
Well, and I guess but here's the other thing. There's a distinction between a game that has a budget of, say, $1 million. Like, what was the game where you could reverse time on the Xbox and it came out on other...
Quantum Break?
Braid. So Braid was made
Braid.
on a few $100,000, from my understanding. A wonderful, beautiful game that was still not exactly super cheap. It wasn't quite an indie title, but it was a small, independently developed game. Then you have something like Cuphead. Cuphead has considerably higher production values. Cuphead was probably made under $10 million, I'm going to guess, but less than the 30 to 50 of, say, a super big budget game like a Sekiro or some of the other stuff that we've been talking about here. Where does Cuphead? Well, that's in between. I think if you say big budget, it needs context around it. And a big budget game that's on, say, a mobile device or the 3DS or the Vita or something is comparably different to a big budget game that's being released for PS4 and Xbox One and Switch. I think there's genuinely a difference in a context that has to be put around it. So when I hear so can AAA games. But when I hear the term AAA, I'm thinking of a game that probably cost upwards of $20 to $30 million in development. That's counting things like maybe the investment in the engine and things that were spent before to make it. And I'm not sure what a good what's the best way of putting it here? Substitute term would be for that. So anybody have any suggestions?
A whole bunch.
Okay, so that's kind of the tricky thing. Yes, spend a whole bunch. In the case of Metroidvania, though, you can just say Metroid because Castlevania didn't add much to that formula.
No, Symphony of the Night was a good game, but it was so just Super Metroid with an Alucard skin slapped over it that it was just, I couldn't believe it. I just kept saying, like, this is exactly like Super Metroid. The save rooms, the concept of just being open world and just running wherever you need to go, fighting random bosses. I was like, this is just Super Metroid with
Well, you also had grinding levels.
What about Castlevania? What about Castlevania 2, though?
Well, but Castlevania 2 deviated from that formula quite a bit, too.
Were anyone paying attention to the chat by any chance?
Or the mountains of games on the ZX
No one
Spectrum?
pays attention to the chat.
I was.
That's
I was.
Oh, God, Tim Houston.
The ZX Spectrum.
But in any event,
wow.
Anybody have any other game?
What is going on in chat?
That blew up. You know what?
That was a while ago, too, guys.
I see it in there, so I guess I'll go ahead and
quickly.
I'll go ahead and give it a shout out. I remember seeing Obey the Beard Gaming when it was on. Like he made a couple videos showcasing him playing boots, burn CDs, whatever. And then the man did the honorable thing and took down all his videos, and that's cleaning up YouTube. I like it.
All right. Does anybody have any other terms in gaming they don't like? That they hate? Here on Game Haters. How about Hidden Gem?
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Holy Grail. Holy Grail is the one that gets me.
Holy Grail. Out of print.
Holy crap.
Out of print. I mean, that's definitely more of an eBay term for sure. Out of print or rare.
But I hate that because they use it on anything.
Or what's the look where the all the O's are
with
A's.
hats.
Yeah.
Hat signs.
Well, I like the eBay listings where women use the items to cover up their private parts.
Ooh, now our friend's insulting my game, so he can go fuck himself because his channel's fucking shitty. I'll go ahead and delete the group right now.
Yeah, what is the FX unit Yuki is a modern day Action 52.
That means it has good music.
It does. With 51 left games in it.
That's good.
I wasn't even fucking with him, but
all I'm saying is at least he gave you Action 52 instead of like Cheetah Man 2.
Yep.
Well, Color a Dinosaur. Yeah.
I don't even fucking know this guy, but he just made an enemy.
RGT 85. Okay. And you didn't bring up my channel. Who is Obey the Beard?
That's Nintega.
No.
It's Tweak's fault that we lost Nintega.
Fuck.
Come
Obey the Beard
on.
is someone we don't even know who the hell they are. So let's move on. What other things do you hate in gaming besides Obey the Beard?
Okay.
Hours and hours of meaningless side quests. Those kill me.
Side quests, and then when you're like starting a new RPG and the characters are like, especially Dragon Quest 2, since I just started that recently, they're like, the fate of everything is in your hands. You must meet my son in a city over here. I will do anything to help you. And then you go out and you go to the shop and they're like, yeah, that sword's $100. You got to go out and level grind for a while until you can save all of our lives and get this sword.
That's what happens when you. That's what happens when you go adventuring in Wisconsin. But no, it definitely it's kind of amusing with like even Dragon Quest 1. It's like you are the only son, the only heir of the great hero Erdrick. The princess has been captured, and the entire world is soon to fall to the Dragon Lord. Here's $20. Go ahead and kill him.
Bye, losers.
Bye, losers.
So side quests to me depend on how mandatory they are. I'm the kind of person who, when I was younger and had lots of free time, loved running around and trying to 100% complete a game.
Yes,
and now, as an adult with limited free time, I don't mess with it. I say to myself, oh, you've got a side quest? Is there something interesting about this that makes me want to do it? No? Okay, I'm not going to mess with it. And that's kind of my feeling with side quests, is it depends on how the game makes it mandatory.
See, I wish I could do that. I really do, because I'm the idiot that found all 900 Korok seeds in Breath of the Wild for the golden turd statue.
Yeah, good luck with that.
It's already done. I'm never picking that game up again.
You're never getting that time back either.
Yeah,
but what about picking that game up for one of the things that I hate, DLC?
I know.
Oh man,
and
I love it. That's why I love Capcom.
They really fucked up with Street Fighter V.
Capcom, they took it to the next level with Street Fighter V, where it was like, oh, you don't like DLC? Well, how do you like buying parts of the game for full price?
Oh yeah, they made the arcade edition not too long ago, and you still had to buy another season pass. It's like it's insane.
Shout out to
money. Hello.
Gredler brought this up with me. He was asking me how the recent NBA game was, and I mentioned that if you play the franchise mode, you can buy a better owner. This is not even a joke. If you pick franchise mode, your team always gets bought by an owner who wants to move the team, fire your coach so he can hire his son, who's rated F and everything, and trade your star player for draft picks. And the only way to fix this is to buy a better owner through DLC.
Yeah,
that makes sense to me.
That's like the New York Knicks experience right there, though.
Or the Lakers.
Nah, the Lakers just fell apart, man.
That's what happens when you waste all your money on a 32-year-old. But what we're going to mention here, in addition to DLC being an irritant of mine, I have one other one that I have very, very high on the list. Maybe you people hate it as much as I do. I've got more than that, but this is the highest one. And this is tank controls. Unless you are controlling a tank, tank controls should never be used in a video game.
You mean like Resident Evil?
Mega Man Legends.
I mean like Resident Evil.
Legends was just fine.
I mean Tomb Raider, the original
Legends
one.
Did
That's why you
wrong.
play it on an N64. No tank controls.
Yes, you have analog.
Yeah, except then you have to have three hands to use the buttons, the joystick, and the D-pad.
They did that shit on purpose.
So, tank controls, another irritant of mine. Who else has some things in gaming that they hate?
Sorry.
How about the N64? The entire system, its entire library. It's really fucking disgustingly horrific controller. The Trident. It really does pretty much two types of games well: 3D platformers and first-person shooters. That's the entire library.
Racing games.
I would argue that it does racing games better than
2D platformers
because consoles don't do shooters as well as PC.
It does flying games very well as well. If you play like Star Fox,
I would say the N64.
Game.
The reason why the N64 is always going to be one of my biggest disappointments. And I probably already did this whole spiel on this stupid show once before,
but because it was a disappointment.
Well, I remember purchasing one probably a good year after it came out. I really held off. It was totally Sega Saturn and Turbo Graphics. That's all I had, other than like Nintendo and Super Nintendo. But like, I didn't want to do the N64 until it really had a good game that I was just like, oh, that's it. And when I saw screenshots of Yoshi's Story, I thought, Holy shit! I know, right? I know, right? But Yoshi's
To this day, I don't own
but
one.
Yoshi's Island was so good, and I was like, oh my god, this could be the reason I get an N64. And I bought an N64 with Yoshi's Story, and I brought it home and beat it in like 2 hours. And I was like, this fucking sucked. I couldn't believe how mad I was. And I'm like, I can't believe it, because Yoshi's Story was legit difficult. Like, it was actually had a good game. It took a couple hours to really get hard, and then when it got hard, it was like super hard. But Yoshi's Story was just junk. It was like all you had to do is collect fruit and then fight bosses. And I'm like, I couldn't believe it. I just could not believe how mad I was.
If you were 10 years old, it probably would have been awesome, though.
No, because I was about 10 years old at that time, and that game was stupid easy.
Which is funny, because I had a reverse experience with the N64, because when I bought it, I got GoldenEye with it. And then I had a couple of their friends that had gotten 64s, and we played it and just went to town. So for me, it was like, oh, amazing. Then Zelda comes out. We play that and swap carts and stuff like that. So I did feel disappointed with the N64. I did buy PlayStation, Saturn later on and stuff like that. But looking back on it, yeah, there's much better stuff that's out there. But the 64 at the time was just perfect.
The 64 during its heyday, like I had no friends. Like we were all either PlayStation or Saturn, or you had both. But like none of my friends.
Really? Wow.
None of
Saturn.
them.
We had one guy locally that had we had one guy locally that had a Saturn, and everybody else is either 64 or PlayStation.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I had a Saturn before the N64, and I actually had a cousin that lived with me in a large house that family had at the time, and he had a PlayStation. When the N64 came out, I got the N64, and we played Super Mario 64, had a lot of fun with it, played Pilot Wings, had a lot of fun with it, even had a lot of fun with Wave Race, despite the fact that it had fairly limited courses. Shadows of the Empire came out, and I remember picking that up at $70 or something around that holiday season.
Gosh, yeah.
That was a piece of garbage. But then I got Mario Kart 64, which to me was a disappointment compared to Super Mario Kart, but still a reasonably decent game as an import that time around Christmas. And I think the N64 has a lot of very good games. They're almost all first-party titles, mind you, and then a very shallow library of games beyond that. I think that there's a lot of weird ports, and then again, as you mentioned, lots of racing games and flying games and things of that nature. But I don't think it's a bad system by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's
a lot of the good third-party support N64 is almost exclusively Western games, like Midway, Acclaim, and they're not the best companies, but games like NFL Blitz, Turok 2, those are classic.
NFL Blitz was good on every system.
And Turok are like your examples of these are games you gotta have.
I don't think those were the gotta have games. I think the gotta have games were the Nintendo first party games.
The 64 was really the 64 was really the start of like, hey, you buy a Nintendo system because you want to play Nintendo games.
Yeah.
It's the multiplayer aspect for sure.
Yep, that's where it all started. I just think that having a system that's the follow up to the Super Nintendo, like that was the most.
It was shit.
Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Am I making?
Yeah, we can hear you. We just don't care. But the big thing is that the N64 would have been a lot different, and the situation would have turned out a lot differently if it had a CD drive. The fact that they went with cartridges is really what.
It was really genius.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And a lot of people don't remember this, but things like Dragon Quest VII, things like Final Fantasy VII. Were, at least in the very early stages of development, intended to be on the N64. Some things like Metal Gear Solid almost came out on N64 despite the fact that it would have been on a cartridge. So I think that the situation would have turned out very differently early on if Nintendo had gone with CD instead of cartridges, their format of choice.
Could always been worse. Could have been PCFX.
The fact that they ever fit Resident Evil 2 on one cartridge, though,
it's amazing.
Yeah, speaking of third-party support, yes, Midway actually, I think the N64 was their highlight game console development ever, because they were primarily known for arcade games before that. And they made a lot of great stuff for the N64, but Capcom actually had a lot of good N64 games. Speaking of another non-Western developer,
a lot.
They had like 3.
A lot. Yeah,
Mickey Mouse Tetris on it.
Mickey Mouse Tetris actually is good. I was thinking of Mega Man. I was thinking of Resident Evil. I know there was a couple of other.
Was garbage.
Did they? Who did not? No, they didn't do Nightmare Creatures, did they? That was somebody else.
No, that was. I think that
Nightmare Creatures is actually better in N64 than PS1.
Yeah.
It's like they redid some of the level design on it.
You know, it was a pretty fun N64 game. Was Hybrid Heaven. That wasn't bad.
That was Konami.
That's one
though.
I
Weird
could
one.
not
Yeah,
get
that's
into.
Konami. Yeah.
It's like a Metal Gear Solid / role-playing game because you actually got into battles and stuff, and you could do like wrestling moves. It was really weird. It was pretty good
Mystical
though.
Ninja is good as well.
Yeah, the Mystical Ninja.
The
game
second
was
one,
really-
the second one's very good. I didn't like the first one so much. It's really just Mario with a pipe. Really? I mean, come on.
Yeah, but I was
Castlevania
okay with that
Legacy of
because it was
Darkness.
Ocarina of Time is amazing. It's Mario with a sword.
Oh, that's the hidden gem, right?
Makers is always
Glover.
another solid one too.
Glover's really good. It's Mario in a
What
glove.
about Blast
I mean,
Core, man? Blast Core.
I've
Yeah.
got all of the
He's like-
N64.
Josh is just like Star Fox 64. It's okay. It's Mario on a
not.
plane.
It's Mario on a plane. Star Fox 64 is terrible. It's all fog. It's
GoldenEye
garbage.
is Mario with a gun.
It is. It's like, yeah. I mean, really? Like, am I wrong? I don't know.
Like
It's not.
Harvest Moon is Mario with a farm.
Oh yeah, the Harvest Moon on the N64 was all right. Yeah.
The Harvest Moon
Just
on
Farmville is all it is.
Great. I don't know what you're
Crossing.
talking about.
Okay, so the N64 hate whatever. We're all over the place, and we talked about patches. And we talked about like, fixes and patches and DLC, and like when you get a game, and then there's like patches that fix it and stuff. Like when we had glitches in games, and we had like features like that in old school games back in the day. I mean, we didn't have patches. We didn't have ways to fix it. Like when Battletoads, like literally when you get to level 11, you cannot continue through the level with 2 players. Like that's in the cartridge. That's something that will never be fixed. And is that something that's a good or a bad thing in today's gaming, where a company can finally go through and really test it officially and fix something like that? And you have a version on your disc or whatever, but they'll fix it, they'll patch it or whatever, and it'll work properly. Like, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Do you think
That's a positive, but they were fixing things like that beforehand. I have a game called Brain Dead 13, which is a full motion video game for the 3DO. And if you initially bought Brain Dead 13 for 3DO, you could not complete the original versions of the retail copies. You had to send in for a replacement disc too.
So it's like the LRG version of Night Trap, except 20 years prior.
Yeah.
Hidden gem.
More money grab.
Holy
But
Grail.
so there'd be like different versions of it that they would resell with fixes and stuff.
Yeah, to make it rare.
Well,
Out of
they
print.
didn't
Holy
even
Grail.
resell it. I think you just simply had to, send in proof of purchase, and they'd send you the replacement disc.
Mail them the word Holy Grail.
X Element
you
will
get it.
remember that Blue Stinger for Sega Dreamcast
Yeah.
had defective discs, and
The bad
Activision
discs.
was sending out
Yes.
replacements for that.
I remember
Sonic
that.
Adventure had the same problem. There was a lot of like launch games.
It was
for
a
the
lot
Dreamcast that had that
The
pressing
browser
issue.
had that issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
The browser.
I'm surprised that Sonic Adventure had that issue, because didn't they do that version with like Hollywood Video where you could rent the system like 2 months
they did,
prior?
but they were.
Yeah.
But the
The
issue
limited
was that
edition.
the GD,
Yeah.
So the issue was that the GD ROMs that they were producing weren't standard, and they only had a small number of pressing facilities that could do the GD ROMs, and they started using some lesser quality pressing facilities as they got closer to the Dreamcast launch in order to boost up the amount of stock and games they had available.
Yeah.
And some of the pressing companies completely HD DVD'd up the Dreamcast discs.
Or original
Yeah.
Laserdisc as well. Same kind of thing. Yeah. Where they just
Mm-hmm.
poorly manufactured. Something was not right. They didn't work properly.
Oh man,
And-
these are the
and you
guys
had
that
the-
did Eraser for Laserdisc. Let's get them.
By the way, that was Sony who was primarily known for doing the terrible Laserdiscs. It was
Oh, was it
a
really?
Sony DVAC or something, or DADC.
Just one specific plant.
Yeah, Sony Digital Audio. I'd like to say it's like Distribution Corp or something, but it's probably not what the DADC stands for. But they were in, I think, somewhere in Indiana, and they're the ones who were responsible for almost all the worst rotting laser discs.
Good.
HD DVDs, by the way, have an even worse rot problem, and they're almost all discs that were done through Warner Brothers. So
But I think I remember you talking about the HD DVDs where somebody had bought like almost a set of, I don't know, a dozen or 20 HD DVDs,
was it
new
20
sealed.
pack?
Yeah, brand new sealed and opened. I'll let you tell the story. It was like what, all of them, and
Yeah, so
Only one of
somebody
them read, right?
one of them read. All 20 of them were bad. One of them, he could pop it in his player and it would start the menus and things. All 20 discs, when he did a disc check, he had a Xbox
my God.
USB ROM. All 20 discs had bad sectors on them.
Oh, jeez.
Oof.
I could talk about that for something that I hate actually. With the new Blu-rays, actually, with a lot of the games, I've gotten them when I pick them up used. Blu-rays have the scratch-resistant surface on the actual lens side now, but they do so cheap on the silk screening. I've picked up games, recently that are less than a year old, and because people have manhandled them, they've already got dings, and you can see light through that silk screen on the top when you hold it up after a year old. And I'm like, what is going on? Is it people just treating stuff like garbage? But that's one of the things that I guess frustrates me a little bit about.
Just cheap.
I'll tell you one other thing I hate in gaming is when you get a game that is disc based and the game is loose in a sealed package.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah.
I love it when that happens.
You can feel it moving around.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
PayPal
actually.
chargeback.
Dude, that happens on literally every game I buy from Amazon.
I was just saying that's a limited run
Amazon
games thing
ones,
too.
Best Buy too. Yeah, limited run does that.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people do. I think they just get beaten around and shipping really bad.
It's just a
DVDs.
special maraca.
It's UPS, and you're supposed to pack UPS stuff to survive a 5-foot drop, and it's like none of these disc games can do that.
Right.
They pop right out.
Oh, I got another thing I hate. The eco-friendly DVD cases.
Oh,
Oh my
so
god!
flimsy.
What is the whole point of just like cutting out a piece of plastic?
So does anybody know the old TV show In Search Of? I know Esteban and I had a talk about this. I think in one of the shows, or maybe it was after the show was over. But I have an In Search Of DVD set. I'm going to pull this out. They put like 8 DVDs in one plastic case where you have to press the middle really, really hard and like jam your thumb to lift the disc out so that the center part will compress enough to lift them. And oh my God, you're going to cut your finger open even trying. I'm going to get it's like a foot away from me. I'm going to grab this for you just to show you how fucking terrible this is.
All right.
When the 360 did a similar thing with, I think it was Lost Odyssey, because that was 4 discs, and it had this thing where they just stacked 4 or 5 discs on top of it at the same time. Where it's like, all right, this should be fine. This should be fine. And Lost Odyssey, I know, has an issue. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all on top of each other.
I think Blue Dragon did that.
Blue Dragon did the same thing. Yep.
Yeah.
Blue Dragon, my Blue Dragon had a door, but look at this shit.
My Blue Dragon did
Look
not.
at this. There's like 8 discs here.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Let's see if I can get this out without cutting my hand open.
We're on
just
call for
lost
911
Dan.
if you kill yourself.
Yeah,
Call
Blue
911.
Dragon. My Blue Dragon's exactly the same. It's 3
Gotcha.
discs.
No, I'm gonna break the disc. You need like 3 hands to do this.
But nothing of value will be lost.
No, see, that's why you do it with Blue Dragon. Game is terrible anyway.
It's the best. It's the best Dragon Quest game there is. I mean, it's Blue Dragon has one thing going for it. It's where Disney got their idea for the Will Smith genie for the new Aladdin movie. So
Oh, is that what that was? I thought that was Will Smith.
That counts as
Just say
a
Will
good
Smith.
thing now, huh?
I'll admit, with Blue Dragon, it was the first game that made me really excited to find nothing. Because I don't know how many of you guys have played it. Where you
Those
actually,
empty treasure chests? No, dude, that caused me to chuck the controller out the window.
but you get that super soothing voice that just says nothing.
Nothing.
Every single time you find
And there's like
absolutely nothing.
there's like 900 some nothing chests too.
But
Because
you can trade them into the nothing guy and then get actual good items. So,
I had a roommate at the time who was like really big into getting all the achievements for 360 games.
Oh
And he
my God.
tried to do that.
Oh, it was Gerald. That's who that was.
No, thank God. But he tried to do that nothing challenge, and I guess there was like 930 some nothing chests or something.
Oh
And
my gosh.
I just no. I if I never hear that voice again, it'll be too soon.
But the thing about Blue Dragon tied to ungrateful sequels or what's the word here? Undeserving sequels. That's an undeserving knockoff game. That's literally, hey, Square Enix, we'd like a Dragon Quest game. Haha, not going to happen, Microsoft. Okay, fine, we'll make our own Dragon Quest game with strippers and blackjack and empty treasure chests.
Nice try.
And we'll get Final Fantasy guy, and we'll get Toriyama, and everybody will be happy.
And nobody was.
It may not be a good game, but it's going to look like the better game we stole.
Yeah.
I mean, it moved a lot of 360 units in Japan, but
It
it was
did,
like a
it
big
did, yeah.
disappointment.
It did. Actually, one of the DS games isn't bad. I think there's 2 of them, and one of them is reasonably okay.
Wait, there's more than one game in that series?
Yeah,
There's three. Yeah.
Holy shit!
There's Red Dragon and Yellow Dragon, right?
There's an anime too they made, of course, for everything.
Oh, yeah.
I remember. Yeah, I remember that.
You know, one game that was like a spiritual sequel, I'm surprised that didn't get like any coverage, was Crimson Dragon on the Xbox One. Because for the longest time, people wanted like a Panzer Dragoon sequel of like any kind.
Oh, yeah.
And then when it's basically very similar. And then when it came out, like no one talked about it.
Dude, that's because it's Xbox One.
Well, and think about this though. It's better than the Panzer Dragoon-esque game that came out for the PS3 later that lots of people talked about, and it wasn't pretty.
Was Crimson Dragon Connect, or was it an actual shooting game?
So it's interesting. It was actually supposed to be a Connect game for 360, and you can watch like leaked footage on YouTube of the gameplay. But then they moved to Xbox One. They didn't change the graphics, but they made it so you play with the controller.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So just tied to things we hate, and you just brought one of them up, Connect. It's definitely up there. I had webcams in general because I also don't like the PSVR's reliance on the fucking camera either. But yeah, that's another thing that definitely needs to go. What are your thoughts on webcam-based motion-controlled doohickeys?
Time crisis.
PlayStation Eye.
Fuck them.
It's like what I do. I get that thing out. I'm like Cybot. I whip it out and bang. That's
It's
camera.
legit.
Don't over there, dude. That's legit.
Is that what it sounds like?
I remember hating the motion stuff when, like,
Yeah, I was gonna say the Wii
we were
motion
playing-
stuff.
we were playing the Wii, the original Wii, and it's like bowling was fun. And then somebody put in Red Steel, and the motion controls
That
on that were
fucking
so
terrible.
That game
god
will red
awful.
steal your money if you happen to buy it.
So
Yeah,
god
yeah.
awful.
The
Yeah.
funny thing is Red Steel 2, even though it's completely different setting, they used the Motion Plus for that one, and the sword fighting is like so much fun.
It's
I've heard
yeah,
the
that's
same thing, yeah.
actually yeah, it's kind of interesting. There was a time when Ubisoft would make really bad first games that would somehow sell well, and then they do competent sequels. So Red Steel was one. Another one was Assassin's Creed. The first Assassin's Creed put the ass in Assassins, and the later ones were actually playable. So that was an interesting time for Ubisoft.
Well, there's a lot of Wii games that have bad motion controls, and there's a very, very, very small number that does it well. Like you mentioned, Conroy, you mentioned Wii Sports does it amazingly. Zack and Wiki is another one that's awesome if you're into the puzzle mode for that. But I've heard the same thing with Red Steel 2 as well. I haven't actually played it, though. But
Yeah,
it's like, I feel
the
like
Motion Plus stuff when they started coming out with that. One of the guys I worked with was really big into the Wii, and he said the Motion Plus stuff, if it supported Motion Plus,
Yeah, like
tended to
Skyward
be a lot
Sword
better.
did, but it was still fucking garbage.
Oh, but you still had people shoehorning stuff into that. Like Skyward Sword is just an abomination.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Skyward Sword sucks.
But a really good, like, kind of under the radar, I will say, hidden gem Wii game that I enjoy is, have you guys played Cursed Mountain at all?
Yes.
Because it's a,
Heard of it, haven't tried it.
Yeah.
By the way, really good is certainly a stretch for Cursed Mountain. It has a nice little shiny box, which is why I bought it. I'm like, woo, it's a metallic box.
yeah.
And then
It's
I
a
found the
steel
gameplay
case.
fun. It's different. It was a different way to approach kind of the horror genre, especially for a Wii game. That's what I thought, at least. And the motion controls are actually odd because it supports the Motion Plus, but actually, if you use the Motion Plus, it's too sensitive, and you actually have used the dumber original Wiimote to activate, the little twirls and swirls and stuff that you have to do throughout the game.
You know, the Wii was actually a very good light gun shooter machine. It didn't get the Time Crisis games, unfortunately, but it got a lot of Sega arcade
yeah.
ports,
Point Blank, didn't it?
Out of Bed.
no,
Yeah.
it didn't
Every
get
house to
Point
the
Blank either.
Dead game, didn't it?
Yeah, LA Machine Guns and Gunblade New York.
And Ghost
Yeah,
Squad is
Machine
another
Guns
one.
was good.
Ghost
Yeah.
Squad.
Yeah, House of the Dead Overkill is amazing.
Weren't there there were like some on-rail Resident Evil shooters? for
Yeah,
that
there's a
thing.
Resident Evil 2 remake, but it's like a light gun shooter. It's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's also a Mad Dog McCree Gunslinger pack.
Oh god.
Oh,
What about
geez,
Rail
I knew that.
Chase? I think we lost Josh.
It just went silent.
Oh,
So
Josh
we're
is
getting-
silent. Yeah.
So we're getting towards the 1 hour mark here. So we've talked quite a bit about things we hate here on Game Haters. So let's go through the
Game
panel and
Haters.
talk about one last thing we hate. We'll start with Sarumaru since he's not looking at the screen.
I hate shitty bearded YouTubers.
Especially the ladies, right?
Who could he possibly be talking about?
Next off, Connor, what do you hate?
That this might be the one time I don't really hate anything. Saru's comic got me in a really good mood.
Josh. Josh is silent. He can't hear anything. Let's move on.
I hate when his mic drops out like that. Because he's talking, but he's
whispering to us. He's like,
flipping.
Ooh, he just said he dropped like 3 or 4 F-bombs.
Sorry, apparently it's your fault he can't play your game because he only made 10 copies, even though you offered it to him for sale for like 2 months.
Yep.
With free art book.
Okay.
Ending art book.
So one trend recently in games that I'm not really a fan of is this stretch towards open world. There's some open world games or like more open games like Deus Ex, Yakuza, and hell Mario Odyssey, where it's like smaller worlds but packed with like things to do to explore. But like this trend of making like the annual Assassin's Creed Ubisoft games, they keep trying to make open world games bigger and bigger. But it's just a way to pad out content and just add more hours on top of the game that don't really mean much. And I don't really like that trend.
Trent, what do you hate?
Everything. I hate everything. Fuck you guys.
Well, you too. And Leaf, what do you hate?
I don't know. I could say actually one person in chat actually said this is a really good one for games where you have to run around and pick up loot all the time. To just
Loot
get
crates.
stuff to crap. Yeah. Drop the loot, then you have to grind and that kind of stuff over. And I have to agree that's one of those things in at least modern games it gets super frustrating.
My choice for things I hate, isometric views.
Fuck, Viewpoint is awesome.
You know what?
On.
Super Mario RPG is a pinnacle of Super Nintendo RPG.
It's isometric.
And it's an isometric game.
Landstalker deserves to be burned.
Okay,
So-
Landstalker sucks. I'm not going to dispute that. That game is terrible.
But they don't represent the genre.
Viewpoint's cool.
So finally, Josh, if you can hear us, and we don't know that you can.
Josh said solstice.
Okay,
in the
Josh is
chat.
muted.
Solstice.
So, solstice, okay.
He got
So,
muted.
it's about time to wrap up Game Huggers. Remember, our thing is at Game Huggers, it's the most important underscore on the internet because nobody remembers what the hell.
Nobody can say
And-
otherwise right now.
It's about time to wrap up the show. So, go bye-bye. Yeah. And thanks for watching, all one of you.
All one of you.
There isn't one person watching. We're just making it up.
No, yeah, Tim, what's his name? Skull Fuckboy was there.
Tim Houston was there.